With the game weeks coming thick and fast, now seems like a good time to bring back the Q&A format for a special episode to cover game weeks 21 and 22. Thanks to everyone who sent in a question. I'll try to get through as many as possible, but there were tons and tons of questions sent in over Twitter, so my apologies if your question doesn't get answered. First up, we have a question from FPL Holly. Hold Kane this week or swap to Morata for a 1-week punt? Spurs, of course, are without a fixture in Game Week 21 and will instead play twice during Game Week 22, so this is an issue that many of us are dealing with this week. I think the main focus at this point has to be bringing in double Game Week players in time for Game Week 22, while still being able to put out 11 decent players in Game Week 21. So with that in mind, selling Kane is a luxury most of us probably can't afford, because it uses up transfers or possibly even hits that could instead be spent bringing in Spurs and West Ham assets next week. However, it could be worth considering if you're captain the player you bring in. So if you're going to go to Morata or maybe even Aguero if he gets rested, and you intend to captain those players, that gives you a better chance of any hits or transfers paying off, before going back to Kane. Another option that I quite like is using 2 free transfers to sell and buy Kane, but in place of 2 different players, so the move becomes slightly less sideways. So, for example, if you've got Morata now in your squad, but you want to downgrade him to Firmino eventually, it could be worth selling Kane to Firmino for Game Week 21, and then selling Morata to get Kane back in Game Week 22. FPL Hunter asks, keep or move on from Richarlison? How realistic is it to hope Lingard continues this form? Well, first of all, I do think Lingard is an option at the moment. He was rotated against Burnley but came on to score the 2 goals, and he's generally been the preferred option to play in the number 10 role for United. Only Mo Salah has taken more shots on target in the last 4 game weeks. However, my focus at this time would be bringing in double game week players, so I'd be looking to give Richarlison one last game when Watford host Swansea in Game Week 21, before moving him on to somebody like Arnautovic from West Ham. He's got the 2 fixtures in Game Week 22 against Spurs and West Brom, and he scored 5 goals in his last 5 games, so he looks to have hit form at just the right time. Harsha asks, is tripling up on Liverpool's attack way too risky, given the rotation? I think we were all expecting a lot more rotation from Klopp against Swansea in Game Week 20, but it was actually the best case scenario for owners of Firmino and Salah, because they both got returns and were also subbed early, which is a positive sign. Coutinho is a little bit more of a worry, because he played the full 90 minutes against Swansea, and he's not had much rest at all over the last 4 league games. But to go back to your question about tripling up, generally I do think adding at least one more Liverpool attacker to Salah is a good option. In the last 4 matches played, only Man City have scored more goals. However, looking at the fixtures, Liverpool have got Burnley away in Game Week 21, and we know how strong they've looked this season, especially at home. They then host league leaders Man City in Game Week 22, which again could be a testing game for them. So I'd say if you have 2 or 3 Liverpool players already, keep them and don't worry about potential rotation. But if you're looking to bring them in, I'd be tempted to hold off until Game Week 24. Pranav asks, is this a good time to replace Eden Hazard? Whom would you replace him with? Hazard has been a frustrating player to own at times. He's gone 5 games without a goal now, with just 1 assist in that time. There are so many players taking more shots on target and getting more big chances than the Chelsea midfielder at the moment. However, it's Stoke at home next for Chelsea. They've got injuries in defence to Shawcross, Martin's Indy, Peters is a big doubt, and Zuma isn't eligible to play against his parent club. So if you've got Hazard, that looks like a good game to give him his send-off, and then you can possibly look to move him out for a Spurs midfielder for the double game week. Martin asks, do you still see clean sheet potential in West Ham? Ogbonna has been a disappointing purchase. It's been frustrating to bring West Ham defenders in over the last couple of game weeks. They've conceded 6 goals in the last 2 after a run of 3 consecutive clean sheets. But looking at the last 4 games on the whole, there are only 6 teams in the Premier League that have conceded fewer big chances, and only Everton, Liverpool and Chelsea have kept more clean sheets. So with the double game week coming up, I think we've just got to ride it out and bench West Ham defenders in Game Week 21, field them in Game Week 22, and then take it from there. They've got good long-term fixtures, so hopefully the form will improve. Trevor asks, who would you captain in Kane's absence? Good candidates from Chelsea and Liverpool. So with Kane having the blank in Game Week 21, we've got to look elsewhere for a captain for that week. Looking at the form, there's one standout option, who is of course Mo Salah. Only Kane has had more shots on target than the Liverpool man over the last 4 game weeks, ahead of their home fixture against Leicester in Gameweek 21. Elsewhere, the Chelsea assets are tempting, particularly Alonso, for those who own him. He's had an incredible 6 shots on target during the last 4 game weeks, so both a clean sheet and attacking returns look possible for the home fixture against Stoke. Matthew asks, are you considering triple captaining Kane for Gameweek 22? So Spurs of course have the 2 fixtures in Gameweek 22, first away at Swansea and then they host West Ham a couple of days later. So the only concern is the rest time between games, but certainly Kane's form is incredible right now. And he mentioned after the Southampton game that he's in good physical condition at the moment. So I think he'll play both games, and he'll almost certainly be triple captain for our FPLtips team. Kane's 12 shots on target over the last 4 game weeks are almost twice the amount managed by any other player. Ideally, you want to use the triple captainship in a double game week that is separate from the main double game weeks, towards the end of the season, because the bench boost chip looks more optimal when there are multiple teams with an extra fixture. And the final question for this episode comes from FPL Pask, who asks, how many double game week 22 players should we be looking at owning, and who are the best options? I wouldn't go too crazy over this double game week, purely due to the lack of rest time in between the games, which could lead to more rotation than normal. So any free transfers you have, I'd look to use them to bring in Spurs and West Ham assets, maybe take 1 hit, but that's as far as I'd go personally. I think between 3 or 4 players will be plenty, maybe 5 if you have an easy route to getting that many, without hits, and without making huge sacrifices to the rest of your team. In terms of the options, apart from Kane, the Spurs midfielders are looking good, Eriksen generally is the more consistent, but Ali and Son have looked more explosive in the last couple of games. And from West Ham, I think Arnautovic is the form player and the standout option to look at, especially with most of us owning the out-of-form Richarlison, who plays Man City in Gameweek 22. That looks like a fairly easy swap. Apart from that, maybe look at some of the cheap defensive assets. There's Adrian, Ogbonna and Masuaku from West Ham, and of course the slightly more expensive Lloris and Vertonghen from Spurs. Adrian's place isn't looking as secure as it was a couple of weeks ago perhaps, but he still made 7 saves against Bournemouth, which suggests it was more the defence generally at fault than him personally. So that concludes this Q&A episode. If you've enjoyed it, let me know by hitting the like button, and be sure to comment below with your thoughts as always. Good luck in Game Week 21 and 22, and there will be a Game Week 21 team selection video coming out on Thursday, in time for the weekend's games. Follow FPLtips on Twitter to be notified of any updates to the team in advance of the Game Week deadline.